Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zelinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome to the No Woman Left Behind show. I'm Rosie Zelinskas. Today we're going to be talking to an HR professional who is going to provide us with her perspective on navigating your career in the corporate world. Monica Faberman is an HR consultant and thought partner for small to medium-sized businesses. She works with her clients to create HR systems that set employees up for success and establish cultures of trust and inclusivity. Monica believes that we all have the ability to lead from any position. Leadership is not your title, income, or position at work. It is how you lead yourself through your life and your relationships. Monica provides us with her perspective on figuring out your value in the corporate world. Stay tuned for this very important conversation. Welcome, everybody, to No Women Left Behind. Today, I have Monica Faberman. She is the founder of Illuminated HR. And Monica, welcome. Thank you for being here. I know that you recently started your own HR firm, and we talked about this a little bit last time as far as how do women value or undervalue themselves when it comes to their career development? I'm so excited to talk to you because we're going to get all the ins and outs from an HR perspective. So please let me know how that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can talk to, I think I'm excited about this conversation because there's a few different perspectives that I can speak from. I think one is internal HR. You know, I was and still am HR for companies. So I'm part of the recruiting process, the negotiation process, the annual review process. So kind of I have that perspective on it from the internal HR. You know, I've also found jobs and negotiated jobs for myself. And I also do a lot of HR phone screens. So I have a lot of these conversations when I'm talking about compensation and value. And then to add to that, I did kind of go out on my own and start basically doing freelance HR and HR consulting with a number of companies. And so through all that process, I have had to figure out what my own value was, right? In as being a consultant and setting my own rates with all of that, which we can definitely talk about. But to answer your question directly, and to provide some kind of backup to my answer, you know, what I see a lot, especially with women, is there's no connection to the value and no connection to their value that they bring and how that translates to the number, to the finances. So a lot of times, you know, I think you feeling undervalued is a feeling and it is absolutely valid. I see it all the time. I've felt it myself. But then just translating that feeling into the action of getting the value that you think you deserve, figuring out what that value is a process. And I think that's where a lot of people I've seen kind of get stuck. They have this feeling, maybe there's a resentment, maybe there's a frustration, maybe there's I don't know how to move forward. I don't know what to do with this. And so then that's when it kind of gets stuck and they, you know, kind of either make asks that kind of fall flat because there's not a lot to back it up, or they don't ask and they just kind of hold that discomfort, which is the last thing that, you know, I would ever want for anyone.
So when it comes to value, I know that you said it translates into dollars, right? Because obviously when we are able to show our value, then we can ask for compensation. But specifically, when we're talking about value, am I looking at, you talked about feelings a lot, how I feel about myself, or is it more of the skills that I bring, and am I able to articulate those skills? Like, can you like break those down for me?
Yeah, absolutely. It's both, right? And kind of through my story, like learning my value through working at companies that had never had HR before. I realized I had skills and knowledge that they needed, but what I didn't have was the confidence that those things were valuable. So it definitely has to do with, right, like the hard things, right? The hard skills, I should say, not difficult, but hard skills, which would be, technical skills, your career, anything that you have kind of worked on, hard skills on your resume, stuff on your resume, right? I think we know what hard skills mean. And then not undervaluing those, and then not undervaluing the other contributions that you bring, your perspective, having confidence in your perspective and your decision-making and your discernment. Those might be a little bit more softer skills, your ability to influence, right? I'm just listing skills here, but we all have unique strengths. And are you connected? This is my question that I would ask someone. Are you connected to what your unique strengths are? Do you kind of know what they are? Do you have confidence in them? And then how do you talk about them? How do you think about them? And how do you talk about them? Because the way you're going to think about them and take ownership over your expertise and over your value is in the way you think about them. So I would ask people to think about, how they think about their skills. Do you have voices that say like, oh, I'm just doing the bare minimum, or, oh, I'm not that valuable, or oh, whatever those kind of thoughts are. And then ask if those are true. I'm getting a little philosophical, a little spiritual here, but, ask if those are true, because those are the voices that are going to prevent you from owning your value and being confident in it and making those confident asks. And, once you kind of get your story straight with yourself, right, your relationship with your value, then you're better able to articulate that and tell stories around what your value is to other people. But, you can do a salary review. There's so much data out there right now. There's so many states that are passing laws. Colorado is one of them where jobs have to post the salary ranges for the position, which makes it much more equitable for everyone. So, there's forces that are like conspiring with you to help people do this right now and to make things more equitable. And you can go look on that number and say, oh my gosh, I'm making, $40K when I should be making 45 or 50. If I left, I would have the same job making 45 or 50, but I don't want to leave, that, but instead of just saying like, hey, this job is over here, I should be making that. Think about like, hey, my value, what am I contributing? And, how do I confidently make an ask and demonstrate, instead of just saying, hey, I should be making more money? What's my relationship with my value? And how do I tell that story?
Got it. Wow. So you talked about a whole bunch of different things. So I want to go back to the skills. So I know that there's knowledge skills, and just for everybody that's listening, knowledge skills are more of like a lawyer needs to know the law, a doctor needs to know you practice medicine. So knowledge skills are one thing, but the other thing are also transferable skills. So those are you organized? Are you able to prioritize those kinds of things? So I think everybody kind of knows what their transferable skills are, but it's almost like they really need to understand their knowledge skills. And you also talked about making the connection between yourself, like your relationship to yourself and your unique strengths. And I think that's really important for you to know your knowledge skills. And there's a book that I have. It's like the parachute book. So like it just basically, it's a book that has all of the exercises that you can and I'll put the link in the podcast notes, but you are able to identify your knowledge skills through a variety of exercises. So I think what Monica's trying to say is that you need to do a little bit of legwork in order to identify your strengths, your skills, so that you can make that connection with yourself, right? Monica, am I getting that right?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect. And then once you actually do that, then you're able to more of articulate what those skills are, which again translates into compensation. Now, you also said something a little bit different. You said you're talking about what you believe about yourself. And I think that more talks about your limiting beliefs. So one of the things that I'm constantly talking to people about is know that you deserve the career of your dreams. And I think once you actually know that you deserve it, you start looking at things a little bit differently. And if you don't think that you deserve it, why? And so kind of start thinking about, why is it that I don't deserve? So I think you also mentioned that, like, what are the beliefs that you have about yourself? So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
Now, you talked a little bit at the beginning about negotiating. I know negotiation for women is sometimes really difficult. What are some of the things that you find when you're dealing with some of your clients and in your past corporate job? What were some of the things that women would not do that you would think you should be doing this?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, asking questions and having conversations, I think when you bring money into it, sometimes there's a fear of losing the opportunity. I think that's what holds a lot of people back from negotiating. And, I think that, if you're being offered a job, so I guess I'll say this, if you're being offered a job and you make a reasonable request or ask a reasonable question, then and they retract their offer, you don't want to work there anyways, because that's how they handle communication. That's how they handle, employee relations. That's how they view their employees. So, it might feel scarcity. It might feel really scarce when you're in that conversation. You're like, I don't want to mess this up. But if you can afford to do that, and you do push back, and they do kind of take away the offer, you don't want to work there anyway. So, I think just not having that scarcity mentality and not outsourcing your power. That's what I think about a lot, is because then all of a sudden you give them all of the power. And I want employees and I want people to know that you have a lot of power, even though your employer, your employer is the one paying you for your services. You still have a lot of power, because if we want to look at the numbers, it costs them a lot of money to replace you. But that's kind of a whole cold answer. But at that kind of like base level, you have power, and you have power in the value that you bring too. So when someone doesn't want to negotiate because they're scared of losing the opportunity, you are giving them all the power in the situation. And I want people to be aware of the power that they have, because the recruiting climate right now is tough. If you have someone that's offering you a job, they really want to close that deal. So understanding where they're coming from and what their goals and their priorities are. They want to close this deal. They've offered you the job. So now you have to think about, what is going to make you want to say yes. And, if they are coming in, you also have to be, I would definitely advise people to be aware of the type of companies that they're negotiating with too, and what's realistic for them. Because a small startup is not going to have as many perks and resources as a big corporate company. So they might offer things like flexibility, flexible time off, 100% remote work, because they're competing against either household names or companies with a lot of perks. So you can negotiate salary, and then there's other things you can negotiate too. Expectations on time off, bonus compensation for incentive performances, or incentive bonuses for performance metrics. So there's definitely more levers that you can pull. Flexibility, right? What's important to you. And I do think that's an opportunity to start the relationship off on that foot where you are coming in empowered and then continuing to kind of continuing to be empowered, right? If you kind of do that work to come in empowered, you can continue to be that way throughout your career. So
got it. Now,
yeah.
Okay, so I absolutely love the fact that you said not outsourcing your power. I think that's huge because, like you said, a lot of people are just afraid of negotiating. So one of the questions that I'm asked quite often is, what exactly do I say? And so I had read recently somewhere that when a man negotiates, they may just say something as simple as, is that the best you can do? What do you find is the best sentence or two? Because it boils down to like one sentence. What do you think is the best sentence that you could recommend people to use as a non-confrontational way of negotiating?
Yeah. If someone said if that's the best you can do, I don't know how to react to that. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. But be gracious, express your interest, because from our end, what can happen too is, we can kind of accommodate, if you want sorry, let me gather my thoughts. Definitely make sure you're willing to take the job first before negotiating too. I would recommend that. If you can't reach the number, if you can't reach a negotiation, that's great. But kind of the one thing that I would say is, to be gracious, say thank you. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I'm thrilled to have this offer on the table. My number, what I was looking for is X. Is that possible?
Okay. That's a very simple and easy way. And it's actually way better than is that the best you could do. So I really like that a lot. So it's a very simple, straightforward way of just saying the words, negotiating without having that fear of that confrontation. You also talked about the fear of scarcity, right? So if you don't negotiate, then you're probably afraid of losing that offer. And like you said, if someone is going to pull away an offer because you negotiated, then you probably don't want to work there, because I think it's expected. Well, let me ask you this as the HR professional. Is it expected for people to negotiate?
It depends. So again, yes, I think the short answer is yes. The long answer is it depends on the pay philosophy of the compensation philosophy, or I should say compensation transparency philosophy at a company. There are some companies that don't negotiate because they have a very structured compensation philosophy. For the most part, they will. For the most part, the conversations that happen on the back end are offer X, offer 70, but we're willing to go up to 80.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah.
And like you said, I think you also said that there's other things that you can negotiate too, not just salary. You can maybe negotiate vacation or working remotely 2 days a week. I think that's really important for people nowadays. Now that we see the difference, the quality of life, now that most of us, or a lot of us, I should say, are working from home, you could also negotiate, remote work like that too. So I absolutely love what you said about Colorado having to post the salary. I think that's fantastic, because one of the things that I'm working towards is to eradicating the gender gap. And I'm trying to do that for women in corporate by empowering them to advance in their career. And kudos to Colorado for actually doing that. So I'm hoping that the rest, do you think that's going to be something that translates into other states in the country?
The optimist in me says yes, but I don't know. I think there's a few different and interesting things happening in the world of kind of compensation right now. One of them is these state laws. Massachusetts, which I spent 14 years there, has some also. But a lot of companies are grappling with the fact that they were paying regionally, but now everyone's remote, everyone is moving around if that's in their ability. So now what do I do if there's a super low cost of living area, do I still pay this metro downtown rate? And the answer to that, I think, is national. I think would be kind of a national rate. But the optimist in me says yes, but knowing that there are also a lot of states out there that do not have a lot of employment regulations. And that's around stuff like when employees, well, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but when and how long employees need to take breaks. Like Colorado also has a much higher threshold for exemption from overtime. It's $45K. I think the national one, I'd have to look it up. You should fact check this, but it's between $20 and $30K. So, so Colorado is a very employee-friendly state. There are other employee-friendly states, but there's a lot of them that just don't put that kind of legislation out there. So I don't know how realistic.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely exciting to know that some states are trying to, close that pay gap. Now, kind of going back to something that you said earlier, you said that people need to learn how to tell their story. So we already talked about their skills, their transferable skills and their knowledge skills. And we already talked about negotiating. But what do you mean specifically by people need to learn how to tell their story?
Yeah. And that comes back to having a personal connection to your value and to kind of personal connection to your value. So, as you were as we were talking about that negotiating question, I was thinking, there's a way to authentically sell yourself. And that is with being connected to your value. So for example, when you're in a room and you're in a conversation, maybe it's a Zoom room, and you're negotiating with an HR person, you want to give them something that they can say yes to. And so say you're negotiating a higher salary, or you're negotiating flexibility, or you have a family and you have kids and you need to pick them up at school X amount of days a week. And, you're asking for flexibility around hours there. And you come in with the confidence and saying, like, this is what you're going to get from me. This is what I can provide. I have done this for this many years. I'm confident in my ability to do that. I will bring this value to your company and this position. And these are the things I take very seriously. And you give them that. And then you're also asking for that flexibility, that extra 5K, 10K, 15K, whatever that is. Then you give them something they can say yes to. So again, telling your story is the external result of finding that connection and owning your value that you can bring. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. I think you connected it really well because again, all those skills and all that knowledge that you have about yourself, you're able to articulate, and like you said, in a story-like manner, instead of just giving all these metrics on everything that you did, on your resume, because your resume is your first point of entry into the company. But I love what you're saying, that you really need to have a connection to your value so that you're actually able to tell them in a story. And that would typically happen in the interview, correct?
Yeah, it would happen in the interview. It absolutely happen in the interview. That's your first gateway. Absolutely. And, because from them, this is maybe to kind of give it a third perspective to someone who's like, how do I do that? You know who you are and you know what you're capable of. And the person interviewing you has no idea. They don't know who you are. They don't know if you're going to be someone that's going to come in and, and leave 3 months later, or these are all the things that they're kind of thinking of, or being able to fit in with the culture and So, or meet the qualifications of the role. That about yourself. They don't know that. And so, so you have to tell them, right. You have to communicate it, but it's way easier said than done. It's way easier said than done. So, they don't know who you are and they're trying to figure it out. And so when you know who you are, you can much easily translate that. Right. And then set yourself up for success too. Because if you're not telling an authentic story, that's when there's different expectations being created.
Right, absolutely. And I think you're very right there by telling the authentic story. That's really key, right? So now, as far as someone just recently asked me, what do you recommend for practice questions for going into an actual interview? And would you say that what type of questions are typically asked in an interview? I've heard that a lot of behavioral questions are asked. And my recommendation is always have a story to a question. So I told the person that asked me, just go online. There's tons of behavioral interview questions. Just answer them and just try to have a story for each answer or for each question. So is that kind of what you're talking about too, about telling your story?
Yeah, definitely. And, you can also because it's so hard to tell what people are going to ask and how detailed they're going to want to get in their interview. And I would kind of blanket. I think that's a great idea to go online and see what questions there are and ask. Another thing you could do is, walk through your own resume and figure out how to tell that story of your resume, the story of your accomplishments, of the lessons that you learned, the struggles, the things that you overcame, your accomplishments, maybe when something didn't go well. I've heard people say, like, if they ask a question about a time where you failed or, things didn't go so well, and what happened and how did you react to that? If someone has nothing to say to that, that could be a red flag in that authenticity, in that realm of authenticity, right? Because we're all human, right? And we all have things that don't go as planned. And really what happens is kind of what we do in that scenario, right? When things don't go as planned. But anyways, so go through your resume and find stories of all of those things that you can tell and have them prepared. And some of the best interviews that I've been, the people that really, that I know from the HR phone screen that they're going to go all the way to the offer are the people that, and it's this phrase, I think it's called like empathetic imagery. It's when they can paint, I think that's what it's called. They can, when they're describing, you can visually see the picture that they're painting. They're telling you a story and they're transporting you into that story. And that story could be something they did in the past, or it can be something that they want to do in the future. We just hired a creative director and she was telling me about her processes. And I just got this very clear image of the work that she did and what she was going to create and provide, and what her expertise was. I just had this super clear picture, and, she knew she's done this before. So she was able to communicate that. And those are the types of things when you have a clear picture in your mind and you can translate it. That's what really, works, I guess.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'll have to look up, I will definitely have to look up the empathetic imagery, because I was kind of picturing your creative director tell you the story, and I don't even know what the story was, but I was kind of picturing in my head. So yeah. I think that's great. So as far as your story, so I know we've talked about a lot of stuff, but I kind of want to circle back to your story a little bit. I know that you had mentioned last time that while you were trying to go into your HR business, there were naysayers in your life. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, there were. And it was all right. I mean, to put it in a nutshell, people were scared for me. It was okay. A lot of people were scared about a lot of things because it was in the first half of 2020 and the second half is in 2020, where there was so much uncertainty. And I'm over here telling my friends and family that I want to go out on my own and figure it out and get clients. And I had people say, this just isn't the right time. I had someone say that it was someone I worked for. I was partnering with them. They told me that I don't belong in business, and here I am, that was late 2020. Here I am. And I've started a business that has doubled in revenue. It started at 50K and I'm on track to make 100K this year with my own business. I assume I can talk about numbers here.
Absolutely. We can talk about whatever you want. So how did you deal with someone telling you, and I totally get the whole fear, especially from your family, because, especially like in relationships, I don't want you to get hurt, that kind of thing. But if you don't go out and get that beautiful relationship that maybe breaks your heart, you're not prepared for the next relationship. So kind of the same in business. So obviously you were employed, you were in corporate as an HR professional, decided to go out on your own, and people that you love and trust are scared for you and telling you this is not the right time. What propelled you to go forward and still set up your business?
Yeah, no, I'm really, and thank you for kind of refocusing that. There was something inside of me that was just, and, I hope there was something inside of me that just knew it wasn't true. I'm not a competitive person. I'm not going to prove someone wrong. That is not what motivates me personally. But when people were saying that, whether it was a fear of like, oh, is Monica going to get her stuff together and figure this out? Because it took me about a year to really figure it out. And that year was tough. It was tough. But there was something in me that just knew, A, that was their fear. It wasn't mine. And B, when someone was telling me that I'm not capable specifically, I knew deep down that wasn't true. And some people get motivated by, I want to prove this person wrong. I don't think about that person, I don't think about that person. And it helped me create those boundaries of like, that does not belong. That thought does not belong here. That is not my thought. And that thought isn't true. That is not true for me. Maybe that is true for you, that person, because that's what's interesting. You start to see people only say things that are true for them because that's how they see the world. So that's how this person sees the world. That's not how I saw the world. So I knew deep down that it wasn't true for me. And I just created boundaries in my heart and in my head that was like, that is not welcome. Like, that is not true. And that is not the reality we're operating in.
That's amazing. Well, kudos to you for overcoming all the people, all those naysayers, as we call them, but also for identifying that those were their limiting beliefs. They were not your limiting belief. It wasn't like you were trying it on. You were like very clear. And, again, congratulations, because not many people will do that. A lot of people are like, well, maybe, yeah, they're right. Instead of, no, I can do it. I can go and set up my business and be successful. And you're obviously very successful right now. And you continue to move up the corporate ladder, but not, business ladder in your situation. So boundaries, I think, is another thing that is really, really important. We need to create boundaries for those people that may not support us. And we may just have to stop talking, even if it's family, we may just have to stop talking about that particular topic and move on to something else when it comes to family. But again, I love that you said, I knew deep down that wasn't true for me. I think that's fantastic, because that has allowed you to really develop yourself and continue to grow and learn. And now you're helping other people do that as well, get careers, and you're recruiting, and now you have a company, and that's amazing. So congratulations on all that.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, so far, making it up as we go along, but I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, Monica, I am asking everybody to give me 2 actionable recommendations for people to take away, because I think a lot of times when I hear podcasts, they have all these experts on, and I'm always left with, okay, well, how do I apply that to my day-to-day life? So what are 2 recommendations that you can provide to us?
2. So I would say, depending on where you are with your value, it might be helpful to ask other people how how they see you. Ask people who you care about and trust for feedback first. And, because, and I say that because it is a personal thing and you do have ultimate responsibility for your value. But if you're having trouble figuring out where to start with that, then asking other people who you love and trust in a professional setting. If I asked my mom for feedback and she said, you are grumpy when you're hungry, which wasn't
not the feedback I need, Mom.
Right. And so, like someone who maybe like a colleague or like someone, hey, what do you appreciate about working with me? I'm trying, you can say whatever you're trying to do. So if you're having trouble with that process, starting with the external piece, and then don't rely on that, but kind of figure out what's true for you. Figure out what in there is true for you. And then, so that would be one, I think, tangible thing, especially if you're kind of having trouble. Another thing that helped me get through a particularly difficult time with confidence and value was I wrote down a list. I wrote it out, a list of, it was big me and little me. And the little me were all these beliefs that I had about myself that were holding me back. Like I was lazy or I didn't belong or I didn't, all of these things like I wasn't enough. I wasn't able to do enough. I'm not old enough, like all of these things. And then the big me, right? So you have them on the piece of paper and then you identify, you can tell, like, then you say, oh, this is little me, or you could give it a name or whatever like that. You could, whatever, your gremlin, your inner critic, all of that stuff. So this is little me. This is little me talking. What would big me say? And then you look at your list and you say like, I am capable. I have accomplished all of these amazing things. I am smart. I am caring. I am, and those all feel very generic, but you can still take ownership of them, and then you're going to have your own unique things. So those are two things I would say.
Oh my gosh, I love the big me and the little me. I mean, that was a perfect way for you to explain how do we actually write down all those nasty things that you say to yourself about yourself, right? And that's just a bunch of crap, really.
No, it's crap, but it's also a part of you too.
Yes.
And it is crap. Like it is such crap. And who knows where it came from, right? That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But it's a part of you. And if you pretend it's not there, then this is going to sound, I don't know if this will sound corny, but if you pretend it's not there, you actually give it more power because you're not paying attention to it.
Oh, I love that. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for those two wonderful takeaways. And for everybody, we will have we will have Monica's contact information in the blog. All of the links were there. That book is What Color is My Parachute? That will be in the links as well. And I mean, Monica, thank you so much for spending time with me today. This has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. We touched on a lot of things that I didn't even think we were going to touch on. Okay, that's a wrap for our conversation with Monica. I hope that you got value on how to figure out your worth in a corporate setting. I'm going to recap the two tips that Monica provided us. The first one is when you're trying to figure out your value, ask people that you know and trust in a professional setting for feedback. You can ask them something like, what is it that you appreciate about my work? So that's tip number one. Tip number two is Monica goes through a process in identifying her limiting beliefs called big me, little me. She essentially takes a piece of paper and on one side she titles it big me. On the other side, she titles it little me. The little me column is where you write down all the negative or limiting beliefs that you have about yourself. On the big me column, you challenge those negative thoughts. For example, on the little me side, you can write, I am lazy, or I don't belong. On the big me side, you're going to ask yourself, what would big me say about this? And then you challenge the little me thoughts. you can actually go as far as, okay, is it really true that I'm lazy? Of course not. You might have a lazy moment. Or is it really true that I don't belong anywhere? Of course not. You may not feel that you belong in a specific situation. So again, you're trying to work on your limiting beliefs. And the one thing that I always say is don't believe everything that you think about yourself, because sometimes we're our own worst enemies. So that was tip number 2 for Monica. If you have any suggestions on anything that you want to learn more about, or maybe a topic that you think is important for us to discuss on the No Woman Left Behind show, please send me an email or a DM. All my contact information is on the website, on the blog, on the website, as well as Monica's information. So again, that's nowomanleftbehind.com. That's our website. So with that, thank you for spending a few minutes with us. Remember to be brave, be bold, and take action. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends, because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.